Hi, I'm John Davies. I'm president and CEO of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. My father was stationed in Lima, Peru in 1953 when I was 3 years old. He was with the American Embassy there. He left the Foreign Service in 1954 and opened a furniture factory in Lima and built some extraordinary pieces of furniture. We stayed there until the mid-60s. Came back to the United States, to Washington, D.C., because I think my father and mother didn't want their children, and there were 7 of us. He didn't want us growing up to be Peruvians. He wanted us to be Americans. So he was worried about that because we were getting very steeped in the Latin traditions, many of which he didn't particularly respect in terms of the male chauvinism and et cetera. But my parents had fascinating friends who would come visit them. They had authors like John Dos Passos came with his wife and his daughter, and they spent about a week with us. And they had just really interesting people. A guy who would go find exotic animals in the Amazon would come to our house and stay for a week, and he'd bring the exotic animals with him. I remember coming down for breakfast one day, and there was the equivalent of an emu that was wandering around our dining room, and it was the Latin American jungle version of an emu was. It was a very cross bird that would peck at you with a very significant beak. So went to Asheville to play soccer at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. And I played soccer and tennis. And I was player coach one year because we lost our coach who really didn't care much about soccer anyway. It was typical of the time. There weren't a lot of soccer aficionados in the US. I met my wife there, and we were married in our senior year in college. We were 21, and she's put up with me to this day. Yep. We decided we wanted to go back to Asheville. And a friend of mine suggested, I apply to be director of development at a boarding school there called Christ School. I didn't know what that was, but I said, great, let's go. And we packed up, I applied, I was accepted and went, and the skill sets required and my capacities kind of matched up pretty well. You have to be able to write fairly well, and I'd learned how to write in Washington because I did a lot of communications there for my family's consulting firm. I did most of their Spanish stuff, so I worked in Latin America, the Philippines, and Spain. But I also wrote in English too. I would write different copy for their newsletters. I could numerate sufficiently. I understood budgets. So all that came together for me in this new career. It became clear that I could do this pretty well. So with partners, we started a firm, first called Jones, Davies Associates, with my friend Jeremy Jones. And then later we included some of our closest friends and partners. And so we expanded it to be the Franklin Group. And we were consulting with only independent schools. The consulting work was tiresome because I would fly somewhere several times a week. And the last year before I moved to Baton Rouge, I flew 300,000 miles. Well, John was at Christ School. I had met him there. This would be in the probably late 70s. He was an alumnus of the school and really one of their fine students. Incredible career there. He'd been a Moorhead Scholar at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which is the scholarship, one of the best scholarships, in fact, in the country. I recommended that he be put on the board of directors there. He did. He brought Virginia, Lyndon, Virginia, and I had dinner with them, and it started a really sweet relationship. He called my wife first. He called Linda and said, I've got this job here and this small community foundation that I chair. Do you have any ideas? Where can I reach him? I was in New York. I was at the University Club. And she gave him the number, but she said, John, let's get him to do it. Because she was tired also of me being on the road. So when he called, he wanted to know if I had any ideas for potential applicants, and I didn't. But he and my wife colluded, and when I came home, we had a more fulsome conversation about it. Our only motive to exist was to make this a better place for everybody who lived here. That was it. So when we entered a meeting, we held the high ground. We could say things very directly and honestly, and people would almost have to listen to us because we had no other motive but to help make Baton Rouge a better place for everyone. And we had no money to speak of. We weren't in a position to make significant grants. And we had to provide value in a different way. And that different way was by providing leadership initiatives that could, in other ways, move our community forward. And through that, we learned that money would follow great ideas. And we didn't need to come with a checkbook. We needed to come with a great idea that could be implemented. And that was what really drove the next 30 years. That downtowns tend to be the mixing pots of the community. Suburbs tend to segregate us into our various different tribes. And downtowns tend to be much more heterogeneous. So they're healthier. And they're not only heterogeneous in the ways we think of social, race, creed, sex, etc., but also in economic terms, where you can have the bank president living next to, the hourly wage earner, and living in harmony and with respect for each other. And that doesn't happen when you move out to the suburbs and you find your particular demographic and you live in your demographic. You don't get a sense of the diversity of the region. So downtowns do that. They express that. And if you have to live and work in downtown, you see that. And I think it has a humanizing impact on people. If you look at the trajectory of our work, the projects each year have gotten bigger and bigger. We've gone from fairly small ticket, but very important projects to much larger, more aggressive, more impactful projects. The Bridge Center for Hope, the Lakes Project, $40 million. The train between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. The water campus is another example. It's pretty amazing to see these things really come to full life. Mary Landry had the idea that we needed to have a water institute. She had seen what the Dutch had done through their water institutes. And she'd seen that and thought that Louisiana needed to have a trusted high science group that could be a great resource to the lawmakers, to the governor of the lawmakers, so that we wouldn't get in these competitive, intra-parish battles. So the idea is, let's get a high science organization that can serve essentially as a trusted consultant to the state. And their advice is considered to be reasonable and scientifically correct. My older daughter was 13 when we moved here. My younger daughter was 7. And now my older daughter's 46 and lives in North Carolina with her husband and 2 of my grandchildren, I would say. Our grandchildren. My wife would resent that comment. And my younger daughter, who was 7, is now 38 years old and has 2 children, is married, and she and her husband live in New Orleans. And they both grew up to be Louisiana babies. My younger daughter bleeds purple and gold. My older daughter, I would have to say in a soft voice, went to the University of Alabama. So that would be a different story. But it means there's a really wonderfully engaging, sometimes extraordinarily clever exchange between my 2 daughters as football season hits the first weekend in November. What I didn't understand is that the foundation would evolve so quickly. Every year it'd be a different institution with very different challenges. I mean, who would have thought we had been, traipsing over to the Netherlands 14 times, taking folks over there so they can understand how better we in Louisiana need to deal with that, and then funding projects in South America and, leading a group of people down there to work in Chile, to work with a place that had been destroyed after a tsunami, an earthquake tsunami in southern Chile, and for the Water Institute to provide some solutions to how they should rebuild. And Quilmes, Argentina, which is right outside of Buenos Aires. So through our work, we've not only managed to establish new assets, new vehicles to advance our community, but we've also attracted remarkable people to lead them. And those people have come and stayed and been part of our lives here. And isn't that a wonderful thing? I think we have to finish some of the work we've started. We have to get the lakes really fully working forward. We need to finish the water campus. The Bridge Center has to be proved out. We're trying to improve the area around the Bridge Center to make it more welcoming. I hope the trains, we can get that done in the next 5. I think John can get that done in Spain. It's just magical to see what he's done there. I think he'll continue to do his magic and we'll get that done. We have great partners at the state. We have good partners at the city. So I think with all those relationships, we can deliver these important, fully developed assets to our community. So I would say, let's take a little pause here in terms of introducing new opportunities, and let's deliver and finish some of these big things that we're taking on right now. My wife and I have taken trips on weekends to explore places we haven't been before. And it's been just wonderful because it's an affirmation of why we came here in terms of the quality of the people. We always run into interesting people in places like Ile Jean Charles and Delacroix, because of Bob Dylan, all sorts of just amazing places. I love the little small towns in Louisiana. I really enjoyed that. But in Baton Rouge, there are an infinite number of interesting places. Obviously, the lakes are wonderful. I love walking downtown. I enjoy the levee tremendously. As Linda and I walk the levee frequently. We like walking around downtown. We enjoy our downtown tremendously. This is a town that is in pretty fast motion, really, for a southern. We think of ourselves as a, oversized cow town. We're really not. We're really a pretty dynamic place. It's got a lot going on.